Kola iuha ichichab. That means that I consider you all my friends. Ampetu kile lila iomakbi. Lila wo ioniha. I'm very happy and honored to be here. And my name is Chase Iron Eyes. And I'm excited to be here. I really, the energy is great here. From the time that we arrived here, I could feel the energy, and I really want to thank those who took times out of their schedules, out of their days, those amongst the Google American Indian Network, to make this possible. From the time we arrived at our parking spots, you know, there's little signs that say parking reserved, or has a little picture of Yoda. It says, "Do not park." Park, or how does it say? How Yoda talks. That we're reserving it for Chase Iron Eyes. So I want to tell you a little bit about, you know, I was born in the Black Hills of what is now South Dakota. Some of you have probably been there. It's where Mount Rushmore is and so forth. And my mother moved us back to the Standing Rock Nation, or the Standing Rock Reservation, where I grew up there my whole life until I was 19, and then I went to college. So growing up on, you know, a reservation, a modern American Indian reservation, at a time, you know, I was born in 1978, and the reservations were created kind of as military forts and prison camps during the late 1870s, when, and it's important to start there, because today, September 5th, 2017, it is now September 5th, 1877, is about a year after the Battle of Little Bighorn. You know, it's popularly known as Custer's Last Stand. We don't think Custer made any kind of last stand, but Crazy Horse surrendered in 1877. And on this day in 1877, Crazy Horse was assassinated by his own people, by my people. And that ties right into what Standing Rock, what the Water Protector movement was all about, and what it is all about. And that is our path to liberation. I wanted to tell you about Crazy Horse because he would say things like, people or a man must have a vision, and they have to seek that vision to the deepest blues of the skies. He would say things like, "It's a good day to die." And at first glance, those seem quite shocking, maybe. But when you study divinity, or you're trying to commune with the divine consciousness in any kind of ceremonial or metaphysical or ritual way, whether it's meditation or whatever it is for you, you come to the conclusion that any day, really, when you're united with the divine consciousness, God, Allah, or whether it's the Hindu tradition, the yogic tradition, or whatever it is, any day is a good day to die, because death is not a death. Death is only a change. It's as much as part of life. And people felt that at Standing Rock. For us out there, it wasn't a difficult choice to have to say to ourselves, we are being called to risk our liberty, perhaps our life, our earning potential, our reputations, our professional reputations. Right now, my law license is at risk. It's on the line. I'm being charged with a felony, with inciting a riot. And I'm facing a 5-year maximum prison sentence right now. But my story started on the Standing Rock Nation, the Standing Rock Reservation. And when you grow up in those environments where there was a very premeditated and deliberate attempt to kind of erase the original spiritual dignity, self-determination, self-reliance, self-esteem. And fortunately, we are survivors, and we survived a genocide, a Holocaust, all up and down the hemisphere. We survived slavery, and so forth. We know, those of us who are paying attention know our history in this, what we should now be considering our homeland. It's not just our country. But I didn't, I grew up inside that environment where it's very much an imposed poverty culture, and all of the quality of life indicators are kind of akin to what would be present in a third world country like Haiti and so forth. There's a lot of challenges, a lot of obstacles. There's also just what I like to call unconquerable dignity and unconquerable hope. And it's evident when the poorest people in the world, put some quotations around the word poor, materially impoverished, deliberately, we made a choice to stand up on behalf of a universal element, a sacred element that we call water. In our cosmology, in our mythology, we have, some of you have heard the term Mini-Wichoni. Have you heard that term? You've all heard the term Mini-Wichoni? Mm-hmm. So that's the Lakota language. And in order to say something like Mini-Wichoni, or really to gain an understanding of the origin of that phrase, you have to go back to one of our first creation stories. We have Lakota words for these stories, what the West would sometimes call myths. I mean, it's not wrong to call them myths, but that kind of has a certain connotation, like it's a fairy tale, or it's folklore, and so forth. It sounds like the opposite of what the scientific method is and what empiricism is. It sounds like a superstition. But for us, these are called knowledge. They're called Otokahe Kagapi, the first beginnings. These stories are called Wakiapi. These are things that I learned from my elders. And there's a different kind of story that's not, it's not like creation stories. They're stories like fables. And those are called Ohunkake. And when you say the words Mini-Wichoni, you have to ask yourself, like, where does water come from? Just think about that for a second. Where does water come from? And we know it's composed of a couple of hydrogen molecules and an oxygen molecule. We know certain things about water. We know that when the spring comes, it thaws in the mountains, and it creates its own path. It's being held in the embrace of Mother Earth. And because the seasons renew themselves, this water is able to find its way through the mountains. Every spring, every freshet, every creek, every stream, even to raging rivers, they are all one water. And all of that water is flowing to every ocean. There is really only one water in our universe. That includes even the rain cycles, the evaporation cycles. It's all connected. But according to just this one cosmology, there was a time of, the English word for it is darkness. But our word for it is Han, H-A-N. I don't know the true etymology of the word Han, But I know from my son peppering me with questions, because he says, Dad, what is ha nothing? And I said, no, ha is definitely not nothing. Darkness is not nothing. Dark matter, dark energy, whatever is holding the entire incomprehensible, infinite expansion that is our known universe is not nothing. Eons ago, more than geologic eons ago, there was Ha. And in that time, the foremost spirit had a name, still has a name, and its name is Ia. Now, Lakota cosmology personifies Ia and calls him a he. Again, when I tell these stories to my daughters, they don't necessarily agree with assigning a gender to a spirit. So I use the word it, maybe just the name Ia, because Ia really doesn't have a gender, but we call it a he, traditionally. Ia became lonely, and Ia began to spin. And it spun so violently that it caused an intergalactic, universal explosion. And in that explosion, Ia created a disk, a globe, a sphere, and Ia sacrificed its own blood to create this disk and to cause this creation. But it had to create of itself. And Ia's blood is water. So Ia, all of its powers, remember he's the foremost spirit, flowed from him or it into water and into this plane, this disk now that is Mother Earth. And Mother Earth wasn't the Mother Earth that we know right now. It was uninhabitable at the time. But his powers flowed into the water and to the blue dome around Mother Earth, the atmosphere and so forth. So when we say that water is life, this is what we mean. These are the deep, deep connotations that come from saying water is life, or mini wichoni, or water is sacred. It brings into being, brings forth our very cosmology. So we have a very real, a sacred connection to water. And so do you. Everybody's walking around with 75% of their body is water. So one last note on that cosmovision, because those things are important, especially in a time like 2017, when we have crossed certain areas of the digital divide and we're going to pursue even more powerful areas of the digital experience, the digital divide. And we have to remember our own sanctity, our own connection to Mother Earth, to the sacred sites, to the waters, to the cosmos. Now, some of you have heard of a sweat lodge. Have you heard of a sweat lodge? Mm-hmm. One last note about that. And I tell you these things so you can get a sense of who I am, who we are, the blood and the cosmovision that I was born into. When we have a sweat lodge, so when Ia sacrificed itself and its power, he sacrificed his own place as the foremost spirit, and its power flowing into the waters and into the blue dome around Mother Earth. Ia shriveled up and became a rock. He became hard rock. And you see him all over the planet. Some people would just see a rock. So would see an inanimate object. Would think that human beings would have some sort of pretentious right to assert dominion over these inanimate objects, even the animate ones. But we see what we call Tunka, or the oldest god. And when we go into a sweat lodge, you take Ia, you take these rocks, Tunka is just another name for Iya. And you heat them up. You combine them with fire, and they become glowing red hot. And you take them into a sweat lodge that is ceremonially and symbolically appointed. This whole talk could be about our cosmology, but I just want to end on this. There's 16 entities that we respect in Lakota cosmovision, or mythology, or religion. Just like Joseph Campbell says, everyone's, mythology is just other people's religions. So in ours, there's these 16 deities. And Iya used to be number 1, but now he's number 4. But when we bring in Iya, the hot rocks, into the lodge, and we bring in water, that's Iya's blood, and we reunite Iya with its blood, and we pour the water on the rocks, and you hear these ancient, older than time sounds, universal sounds, natural and elemental sounds. And that's, on my journey that I've been on, in trying to free the water protectors and making sure nobody does a single day in prison or in jail, I've been talking a lot. I've been talking a lot about the word colonization and how those of us who are reared in American education systems or Canadian education systems or educational institutions of the West, we think of colonization as something that's now called white people colonizing and enslaving brown people and black people. I mean, it's okay that's a trope. That's a way to think about it. That's a way to experience that word. I know because I grew up on a reservation. But as I expanded my horizons, put myself in those educational institutions, whether that was undergraduate training or law school or whatever it was, I found out that white people is not a real word. I found this out when I ran for the United States Congress as well. There's no such thing as that. There's such things as Germans and Russians and people of Scandinavian descent, Norwegians, all over North Dakota. Irish, even though Irish don't consider themselves white in that demographic. But I began to explore the word colonization as it applied to those demographics, because what I found out is that everybody had been separated. There was this process of abstraction, a separation, a division of our mind from our spirit, our heart from our intellect, our human connection to something so basic as our food source. Who here among us has a sacred relationship with their food source right now? That's right. There's people raising their hands because we are seeking that reconnection. That's why I think so many people went to Standing Rock. That's why I think so many people respond to song, they respond to the drum, they respond to what the West, again, would call ritual, but we just call it ceremony or protocol. And some of these songs that descend from our cosmologies, they don't have words. They're older than literacy, not even literacy, but the oral tradition. And they're inspired by the elements themselves, by the wind, for instance, or the birds, the winged nation. These songs are inspired and gifted from other groups of the four-legged community, whether that's wolves or coyotes or what have you. For us, nature is our media. Truly, nature is our media. And I think that, I'm here at Google, the world's leader, the harbinger, really laying the foundations, the archetypes of how we are going to color our personalities, how we are going to perceive our realities, how we are going to connect with each other, with our surroundings, how we are going to interface with the universe. Very, very powerful concepts and challenges are coming. And what I know is that we are sitting amongst each other, and we are sitting amongst people who have the capacity to appreciate a term like water is life or Mini-Wichoni. I wanted to start there and then talk a little bit about, what happened at Standing Rock. But before I start that, how many people had a chance to go out to Standing Rock in the room? That's pretty good. Like I said before, I had finished law school sometime in 2007, and we did not move back to the Standing Rock Reservation until 2014. And it was a strange experiment to bring our kids back to that environment because they had never lived there before. And it was, but we're thankful today that we went back, that we came back home. It wasn't until 2 years later that I began my run for the United States Congress. And actually, in some synchronistic way, it was April 1st, and I was going to seek the nomination, the endorsement of the North Dakota Democratic Party. And I ran into this large caravan. We're talking 100 horses, runners, like a caravan of cars a couple miles long. And I was in a hurry, like I'm always running late for things. I was in a hurry, and I came up behind this caravan, and I thought, oh no, I'm gonna be late for the Democratic convention where I've got to receive the nomination. We've got to go through this whole process. So I had to stop what I was doing, turn around, and go all the way around a different route, which was almost certain to make me late, but I made it. But it was a sign to me that I was not going to be able to ignore this Dakota Access Pipeline issue. And I remember, thinking in the community, we didn't quite know how we were going to deal with this pipeline or how we were going to fight it. And if it wasn't for technology, if it wasn't for those platforms that kind of democratized media, democratized journalism, and just the ability to get your story out in the way that you wanted to get it out, we would not have been able to generate the attention or the effort, or we would not have been able to spark this international spiritual monument, is what one of our elders refers to it as. It's a spiritual monument that lives in our hearts and in our minds. Everywhere I go, people know what water is life means. But water is life it is more than just a saying or a mantra. It calls into question the very meaning of terms like civilization, the very meaning of terms like progress, and how those concepts have been defined for us, but for a long time by these processes of separation. When I was talking about separating our spirit from our mind and our human experience with the sacred, whether that's our food source or sacred sites or the cosmos. I mean, if you go back far enough in any one of your lineages, you will find that you are descended from original people, original nations who had these sacred covenants. And now today we think of those people as indigenous people. And that's okay, because indigenous people is an international legal term of art, kind of like tribal nation. But through my journey, I've been able to make the connection that we weren't the only ones colonized. Europe was colonized way before they got to our continent. And that separation had occurred. And people are trying to reconnect to that right now in our country, in our homeland. I really, I've been able to find that out in just in my last few months of travel, is that we are yearning. I like to say that our spirits are grieving for ceremony, because intrinsically we are spiritual beings that are seeking this liberation, that are seeking to be able to transcend either the limits we were born into, our bodies and our language, and certainly seeking to liberate from those labels and other human constructs like race, like religion, and so forth. And I think those of us who are in these circles, who are part of this spiritual evolution, or certainly a social evolution, those of us who are on this trajectory are seeing each other. That energy is resonating with all of us. And it's being challenged right now politically. You can see the separation, the hate, the division, and the fear that is being perpetrated. It's being pushed out. And so it finds its homes in some places. But those of us who are guided by love, guided by compassion, guided by peace and prayer and dignity and bravery, we know that we cannot back down from any injustice, no matter what the odds are. And at Standing Rock, right now, there are 843 people who are facing criminalization because a private military contractor was able to instigate, corporate-sponsored and state-executed violence and rights violations against peaceful and prayerful water protectors. Those of you who followed the entire struggle know that not once did we instigate violence, did we instigate aggression, did we do any kind of assault or assert ourselves in that way. And it's a very conscious and strategic choice that those of us who can see that we are at risk of being oppressed, that we are at risk of having our water poisoned or privatized, that what constitutes law and order and what constitutes our jurisprudence does not have a place for sacred water, or even water as water quality. It doesn't have a place for healthy ecosystems. And we are people who believe and know that these are natural rights. These are birthrights. These aren't rights that descend from synthetic bodies of man-made law and underline and score the patriarchy made law there. So we are really on this front line, and we were able to see it at Standing Rock. We were able to see this group called Tiger Swan, which called me and my children jihadists because we were engaging prayer and connections in spirit to the land itself, and that it was able to motivate people. It was able to activate part of their consciousness. This same thing happened during the ghost dance era. I've said that we are the ghost dancers of our time, but what has happened at Standing Rock and what continues to happen, they're foretelling of what kind of human rights, natural rights, civil rights, constitutional rights, what sort of rights private military corporations are willing to violate in our own country. That's what's extremely significant and why we are asking people to turn their attention back to the water protectors, especially those of us who are being criminalized, those of us who are facing prison time. It's very important because you have to think about that. There's lawyers in the room here, and I'm a lawyer. And when law enforcement is able to say that they are simply upholding law and order, most people stop their inquiry at that statement because law and order carries a weight of legitimacy to it. But at Standing Rock, we were really trying to pierce, and sometimes in law we talk about piercing the corporate veil. We were trying to pierce this corporeal veil and ask, who is defining and designing the contours of law and order? Who says that it's illegal for somebody to stand and pray, sometimes in a public right-of-way? Who says that it is legal to force one population at gunpoint to bear a risk, cancerous, poisonous risks to their children's water, while another population is not made to bear those risks? That's exactly what happened. Who says that's law and order? And even Pope Francis, the wokest pope ever, would agree, because in his encyclical, he's saying things like, it should be a sin to poison a river. Maybe corporations should be held liable. And that's a very powerful concept. That's going to take us down the road of corporate personhood. And when we're talking about piercing the corporate veil, we here in this room, the leaders of our future, the leaders of our digital and spiritual evolution, we have to take responsibility and ownership of what we are doing. And this Google is doing that. Energy Transfer Partners and Tiger Swan are not doing that. I say this all the time, that capital without compassion is uncivilized. It truly is. And if we take a look at Standing Rock, we have to be willing to sacrifice. We have to be willing to step out of our comfort zones and to really redefine what progress is, what civilization is, and what law and order is. Because we know that law and order should serve people. Law and order should serve Mother Earth. It should serve our children's rights to clean water and healthy ecosystems. Currently, it doesn't. This is why there is a pipeline at Standing Rock right now, despite our most valiant efforts. And the scope of Standing Rock was immense. Just in this room right here, probably 30% of this room or better went to Standing Rock personally. Not only that, but on the internet that Al Gore invented. This is the only place where people will get that. Tens of thousands of people gave of their time, their energy, their their precious time here on earth and came out there in person. Truly amazing. It was it was a spiritual awakening out there. The water was calling and is still calling to us. But online, millions of people, hundreds of millions of people in our country alone were able to pay attention. They were able to be there in spirit. They contributed, they donated, they ran food, blankets, water, supplies, humanitarian aid of all kinds out to those at Standing Rock. And I don't know, I would dare to say that billions of people around the globe were able to pay attention. They were able to be there in spirit. Because this is the first time that we were able to transcend those differences, sometimes those phenotypic differences of race, color, creed, religion, all that stuff. And to be able to stand up in truly a selfless act of compassion. We were willing to stand up and place our bodies in harm's way on behalf of and in defense of water. That is powerful. That is unprecedented. That we were able to, and you know, I was very much raised in a family that was fully cognizant of the civil rights struggles. I was very cognizant of the systemic nature, unjust nature of some of our systems that resulted in the Black Lives Matter movement and so forth. But this time around, because Indigenous people still kept alive their sacred connections to the universe, and we are still gifted with those songs, with those prayers, with those ceremonies, with that divine awareness, we were able to collectively elevate global consciousness. We were able to change our reality. And right now, the state of North Dakota, who are good people, I ran for Congress here, Morton County is maintaining charges, criminal charges, against peaceful and prayerful water protectors. And by doing that, by maintaining those charges, they are trying to preempt and usurp and to seize the legal and moral authority to call somebody a criminal. It's very important that we get to that point. This is why it's so important that people help us compel, put moral, spiritual, and other pressure, positive pressure on them to drop all of these charges that they are currently maintaining against peaceful and prayerful water protectors. And I don't know if we're gonna put that up on the screen. You know, you could either text Lakota to 64336 or log on to lakotalaw.org. We are making tremendous progress. However, I think we're beyond 30,000 signatures. More than 20,000 of those coming the old school way, like going door to door, going to gathering, reaching people where they're at. And it's an honor to be able to spend this little bit of time with you to let you know who I am, the cosmology and the culture, the worldview, the way of life that I was born into, but still being able to connect with anybody, regardless of what those classifications are, because our spirits are universal. And we are all, spiritually inclined to seek those connections and to really to return to the sacred. And my little girl, one of my daughters, she's 8 years old. I was speaking with some Google folks who are, I understand, are creating a Lakota language translate or app or some other tool. And I was completely encouraged to hear that, because in language is kind of, we say language has its own spirit. And again, we have another story about how we got language, received it. In there is contained the archetypes, the foundations, the ways that human beings learn to even perceive themselves in the universe, how they learn to color their universe, how they learn to imagine, how they think. So for Google to be doing that, which they've already done for the Cherokee language, I was completely blown away that this is going to be possible for my daughter and those of us who are second language learners. You know, I was raised learning English as a first language, and then it wasn't until later that I began to try to learn Lakota. And when the immersion school came to the Standing Rock Nation, to my reservation, we lived an hour away, and my little girl was 4 years old. So she rode a bus. We had to take her to this bus at 6:30 every morning, and she rode 60 miles one way. She had a little commute, little 4-year-old. She commuted with one of our elders who was a teacher at the Lakota Immersion School, but who was an original language. He was born with the Lakota language. And so the possibilities are endless with how we can unite spirit and technology. It's part of our evolution. And it's kind of scary. It's very, very serious. You know, virtual reality is already here. I have not experienced it yet. But we are sitting in a place where we are going to determine our cultural reality. We are going to do that as a human species now. And so for those of you who are out there, I wanted to impart a little bit of this spirit of liberation, because we can't forget who we are. We can't forget where we come from. Those things are so important. It's so important for us to ask those questions that philosophers, theologians, seers, and probably just homeless people on the street, poor righteous teachers, have been asking themselves and have been seeking the truth since the dawn of humanity. We're truly on the precipice of a significant time. And for us at Standing Rock, for us in the Lakota Nation, we are fully ready to embrace any change. That's all we've ever done. We've adapted. We've survived. And for us to put it on the line out there at Standing Rock on behalf of and in defense of sacred water wasn't even a question. I'm looking forward to getting my charges disposed of so I can join the next fight. And in the process, continuing to go wherever I'm blessed to go, wherever people are listening, wherever people are seeking those connections. We're ready to make those connections. This is our homeland. And it's your homeland too. This is more than just your country. Another thing at the front line and during the Standing Rock battle was the concepts of patriots and terrorists. And who is defining the contours of those terms like patriot and terrorists and immigrant? It's powerful. Language is powerful. And for us, you know, the patriot is the mother who sacrificed everything to go protect sacred water so her children could have clean drinking water. She's not the terrorist. The patriot isn't the person that is extracting a common resource such as fossil fuels, putting at dangerous risk and peril another common resource like water for the benefit of their private profit. That's not the patriot. That might be the terrorist. That might be somebody that's putting us at unnecessary risk. Standing Rock continues to be powerful. And I really want to engage you. I know I came to Google to speak and to share and to give a talk, but I also came to learn. I came to meet people. I came to make connections. We don't have very long here on earth. And so we have to stay busy. We have to be grateful every day, whether that's greeting the sun, or you might hear the birds sing in a certain way on your walk, or you might be blinded by the way the sun glints off the water and just catches you. You might see the sunset. In those tiny moments, you might be able to make a connection. You're able to transcend. You're able to make yourself one. We have another concept called Madakuye Oyasi. It literally means everything that is my relative. These are some of the ways that we have to begin to partner, to share our truths, share our experiences, and create the kind of reality, the kind of evolutionary process that we want for us and for our children, our progeny. We're facing existential crises right now. Whether that's, the hurricanes in Houston, climate change, the whole Midwest and from Montana west is burning up right now. Drought, we just got over a drought out here. We've got a nuclear potential that's very, very real, even though for some reason we're able to deal with that effectively. We're able to put it somewhere and just, kind of continue on with our day. But we have, just right now, they're about to try to declare human beings illegal. Human beings that have a prior and original birthright to seek their destiny here, where we are at right now. Some of the original civilizers of this hemisphere, when they try to declare an entire religion taboo and say you can no longer enter our country. Those are the times that the front line is everywhere. I know maybe it's hyperbole to say that we are in a place right now where the battle for the heart and soul of our homeland, of our country, is every single day, every moment. You have to choose to show up. Standing Rock is just one of those moments. Standing Rock demands a sacrifice. I've got to be willing to go to jail to stand up so other people can see that water is life. Water is important. And I know that inspires other people because I'm inspired by those others who are led by love and compassion and bravery and peace and dignity. But I wanted to share at least that much with you. And thank you all for listening. Thank you for connecting with us afterwards and continuing to stay engaged in the work that we are doing and the direction that we want to compel not only our homeland, but to compel humanity. This is the scale and the scope of our vision now. We're all part of this same vision. So I do want to leave some time for questions. Thank you.
We have two questions from the Dory. So Chase, the first question is, when we see and hear changes in the current administration that hint at rollbacks at the EPA and other environmental programs, how does this affect tribal protections or agreements between tribal lands and the U.S. government, and to what degree?
Yes, the United States currently holds Native nations or tribal nations in a state of tutelage and oppression, kind of like a guardian to a ward. You don't learn these things when you grow up on the res, and they don't necessarily even teach you at law school. They just teach you that Congress has this superior and plenary authority over you as an Indian person or as a tribal nation. So when they are rolling back federal laws, it has a direct and immediate impact upon Native nations. And that's why Native nations are willing to push back and say, look, this law and order that is being imposed upon us, that is causing us undue risk, is not right. It holds no legal or moral authority and should be challenged. But the only way to challenge that right now is through peace, prayer, and standing up. But that's just one thing. That's just one challenge. So what happens at the federal level has a direct and immediate impact at the tribal level.
Thank you so much for being here. I have a question for you. And that comes from my own experience of being at the WTO ministerial proceedings back in 1999.
Yes.
And that was that I was talking to a group of activists. Actually, I used to be an environmental activist too, and it struck me how you can break up a mob of people who think single-mindedly about something just through conversation. And I'm wondering if you or any of the Standing Rock people have had a chance to speak individually, one-on-one, with members of the police forces or Tiger Swan. And have you seen any of their humanity? I mean, how can we break through to them individually?
That's a very good question. What was poignant, significant, was this juxtaposition when I was on the front line, right? And I was running for the United States Congress at the time, so I always wore a mask. And later we did that to protect ourselves from these private military contractors that were snatching your identity with facial recognition and lots of other kind of crazy frontier-like things. But when I was at some of these actions, on the other side of the front line would be these military-ready police. I mean, they looked like they were ready to roll into Iraq. And I looked through the glass shield and I would see friends. I would see my friends that I had played basketball with at the local YMCA, the Young Men's Christian Association. Every other day at noon, we would go there to play basketball, and I would see my friends on that side of the line, and I'm on this side of the line. And in that little moment, we were both playing our part in this drama. But because I had run for Congress in North Dakota, I knew a whole lot of people. And that was one of the most important strategies, was to begin to try to humanize everybody on either side of this struggle. Because there is a certain amount of cover that people can claim when they're saying they're just following orders or they're just upholding law and order. So it was very important for each side to humanize each other. And one way that I did that was when I was in jail. The day that I got arrested, the correctional officers had been there way too long. And what I did was I helped kind of diffuse tense situations so that we weren't putting undue burden on those people who were just doing their job. And so it's a struggle, and that's the war of the narrative out there on Standing Rock. Very quickly, I'll mention that Tiger Swan had begun to issue these media strategies and these missives, these documents that would say things like, that would make it into local mainstream news outlets, saying things like local ranchers, cue, the Germans and the Americans or whatever, local ranchers in fear of their lives because protesters are killing livestock. Like they try to harken back these old prejudices on both sides and make it seem like it was the 1800s out there again. That's when I very first started to say, look, we need to cut through all this Indian people and white people dynamic that is being exploited out here in North Dakota. And we have to start uniting. We have to start finding a way to cut through that and to unite each other. Otherwise, this is gonna be a card well played by these operatives. And that's kind of where we're at right now. In our country, we saw there, whatever they're willing to do to us, they're gonna be willing to do to anybody who stands up against a company that wants to poison their water or put a nuclear frack waste dump site wherever you might live, or destroy some other aspect of our ecosystem that doesn't have any legal protections right now. When we are all going to be called to stand up at some point. So it's really, really important that we do that we come together, that we humanize each other, and that's part of my message, is that we have to liberate from those differences, perceived differences, and differences that we're born into as well. Thank you.
If you don't mind, I've got just a couple.
Yeah.
First, thank you for being here. We appreciate it immensely. And just the first is actually just a small example. But I know that they steepened the penalties for protest in North Dakota. They were successful in that. Do I also understand that they almost passed a law that made it legal to run over protesters that were in public roadways?
Yes, that's a very that's why kind of the energy that we have, that progressive people might have, or those who are on this trajectory of social and political evolution and spiritual evolution. It's important for us to be active on all these fronts, because legislators create this policy, and during the No DAPL struggle, legislators created a policy. They introduced a law that would waive tort liability for motorists who happen to run through and potentially kill a protester in a larger group of protesters, like exactly what happened at Charlottesville. But that law was never passed. They did pass other laws, that it's illegal to conceal your identity in furtherance of a protest, that any kind of property damage to commercial activity would be a felony. And they even tried to eliminate like tribal gaming. So there's, when we say the battle for the heart and soul of our country is every day, like we are being tested right now as a country. And that's why it's so important for us to come together. I've been preaching that everywhere that I go. Even when I was running for the United States Congress, it was most important, because that's when, and we obviously survived Trump. A lot of us, thought the sky was falling. But we know now that we'll survive whatever, you know what I mean? That's why we have a representative democracy, a Republican form of government, checks and balances, and judicial supremacy and so forth. We will survive as a people, but we really need to concentrate our efforts on all these aspects of what I call the front line, because they have very real impacts on our lives. I'm glad that law didn't pass. There's another law on the books up there in North Dakota that it is illegal for more than, I think, 3 Indians to congregate, so that you can consider them a war party. And so this is me in my sweater vest and bow tie friends at the coffee shop. You know what I mean?
Second question. Actually, if I recall correctly, and I'm hoping I'm wrong, and please fact check me, but the vehicular manslaughter waiver law, I think, missed by only 5 votes. Second question is, have you considered skipping Congress altogether and going straight for the presidency? I mean that.
You know, I have considered that, but I also anywhere that I go, anywhere that I'm blessed to be, I can feel this energy. I can feel that we are all on the same path here. Running for the United States Congress in North Dakota was an eye-opener. I was made acutely aware of how money and other interests have kind of hijacked our democracy. We don't have leaders anymore who are guided by conscience or are seeking a higher consciousness. We have politicians that are forced to raise money. I spent all of my time dialing for dollars. So I know that we are going to produce the right kind of conviction and values and truth seekers, and those who really are trying to create a better planet, those who are guided by compassion and love and bravery. I really believe that we are going to produce those kind of leaders. We're in a tough spot right now. It's very hard. It's so easy to despair and just kind of try to step away from it and quit showing up. But we cannot do that. I like, for instance, I'm flying out to DC to speak to a progressive gathering about what we are going to do about this political system. It's not serving the people anymore, and it's not serving Mother Earth. And we don't have to get tripped up in the labels. We just have to be truthful about what kind of world we want to create. And I think we're on this path. I believe that, you know, anything good that I'm able to impart that comes from the substance that I'm evolving into, that I was raised in, that we are going to be able to see leadership that reflects any good that I'm able to impart. You know, I truly believe that.
How do you get past the anger?
Yeah. You mean from the entire colonization experience, or from the pipeline?
I'm sure, like I do, you have generations of anger embedded in you.
Yes.
How?
So that's a very good question, and I think, you know, we are a social experiment. Our country is the greatest experiment on the planet. I believe in our country. I believe in our homeland. I believe that we are the true patriots. Anybody who's willing to stand up for sacred water and the lands and so forth. And it is true that Native people, the original civilizers of this continent, were subjected to a different kind of colonization. There's the same kind that was executed everywhere else. But that expropriation, it does cause anger, and I think that's just a stage, you know, maybe in Pedagogy of the Oppressed or somewhere, you can learn more about the stages of grief and coming to terms. But I went through that. I mean, I'm not trying to downplay that whatsoever. Like, I went through that very, very heavily in my adolescent years into my early adulthood years, and I just had to go on a journey of self-discovery. I don't think there's avoiding it. There's just dealing with it, and you heal from it. You let the scars or the wounds scar, and then you're able to evolve from that. You go from anger to a place of compassion and bravery, and so it's very real. There's no way to deal with it. You just have to let the tissue scar.
Just one quick question. What are the most pressing issues, maybe for you personally, and then more for the tribe as a whole? Like, obviously the criminal thing, and then like larger with the tribe is maybe working on legally, like, next steps. Just curious.
Yes, the most immediate and pressing issue is for me to stay out of prison. You know, for me personally. I have 3 kids. I have a wife that is a rock star. She runs the entire clinic on the Standing Rock Nation. She's a Stanford grad, so she's very, you know, partial and familiar to the area here. So I need to stay out of the law's hands in that fashion. That's why we're out here trying to raise as much awareness as we can. But for the tribal nation, we need to renegotiate the treaty relationship that we have with the United States. We are we're tripartite citizens. We are descended from the original and intrinsic sovereign authorities to determine our destiny in our hemisphere. But we also have treaties with the United States, and now there's also the states of the Union. So I mention those things because I want to. We shouldn't be living in the level of imposed poverty that we are living in on the reservation. We have tremendous gifts, knowledges, and worldviews to share. We belong as dignified, upstanding members of the world of nations. And so it's part of my life's work, part of the work that I was born into, that my mother taught me about, you know, growing up on the res by herself, the single poor working mom, put me on that path to seek that, but also to seek it in a different way. Seek it in this. We talk a lot about peace and dignity. And we do it in prayer. And we talk about it like that because seeking that prayer, that peace, and that dignity, to know the power of peace, results in you're availed, you're spiritually and morally authorized then to stand up. And when I say not to back down from any injustice, I mean any action that threatens, you know, peace, righteous peace. So, on the reservation, this is part of why I'm coming to Google, because there are many things that we can do to change the realities of reservation life, which is a struggle, and institute a cultural and moral dignity rather than a cultural and moral poverty. Those are some of the, and it starts small in whatever I can do, whatever skills I have as a lawyer. You know, that's part of my personal journey, not just at Standing Rock, but for Indian country and for the United States. Like we can do it all, and we are capable of it, and we're just looking to take our place wherever we can. So I know it's a tall order. That's a long journey to end poverty, but we have to believe in it. It's kind of like running for Congress in a very, very red state as a progressive brown Native American guy. You have to convince yourself that it's possible, that you can do it, that it's for real, and you have to show up every single day. But I believe that it's possible. I believe it's real. I believe we're going to do it.
Chase,
Yes.
there are people all over watching this and listening to you who probably want to know how they can help. And if they go to lakotalaw.org, we have an ongoing project which you are leading and which others are leading. And I just want to comment that there are 7 cities now that have voted to pull their money, divest their money from the big banks, which include Wells Fargo, Bank of America, Citicorp, U.S. Bank. All of them are funding the pipelines and funding DAPL. So there are cities voting to divest. and trying to figure out how to set up public banks as alternatives to these big banks, or going into credit unions, et cetera. And that information about that program is on the site if people want to do that. We've just voted that in Santa Cruz. But also, the pressure that we're putting on, there's the thousands of people who are sending this petition letter to North Dakota to get them to drop all these charges is really important, because the water protectors are innocent. The guiltiness in terms of violence is on the side of the Energy Transfers Company and Tiger Swan. This is really wrong that they continue to prosecute innocent, peaceful water protectors. And they need to dismiss all these charges against everybody. I mean, there are trials scheduled right now for next May. This is an ongoing, ridiculous legal aggressiveness against innocent people. So everybody should send that letter to North Dakota. And can you tell us again what the number is if you want to do it on your phone, you do what you're saying the number is, or you can go to lakotalaw.org and send the letter right away. It goes right to North Dakota.
Yes, thank you for that. It is important. We have to take a stand. And how you help right now the water protector situation that we find ourselves in, where we are being criminalized right now. What you do is you text Lakota, Lakota, to 64336, or just log on to our website, lakotalaw.org. And there's another website, mazaskatalks.org. That might be confusing because it's another Lakota word, Mazaska, talks. Means money talks. There is never a time where you can't contribute to the kind of world that you want to create. Every dollar you spend is a vote for what kind of world you want to live in. So if we want to justly transition from extractive industry coupled with big finance and endless wars and so forth into something that's more renewable and regenerative and kind of evolved, we can do that. It's up to us. It's on us to compel our leadership, our policymakers and so forth to take us there. And one way you can do that is to move your money. You have tremendous power and ability to impact our path, our trajectory. So those are the ways that you can continue to help, and just link with us. When you send us that text, if you want, you can give us your number, and we won't blow up your text. We're only going to text you like when we have something extremely important that we think is worth your time. And each of you have networks in here, hundreds and thousands of people that have very real voting power, economic power, and so forth. Like we should be determining our destiny. Yes.
I know you're having an event in Sunnyvale tomorrow. Will you tell people how they can come and meet you and participate?
That's right. So tomorrow, which is Wednesday, September 6th, it looks like it starts at 7:30 p.m. local time, Pacific time. No, tomorrow. Yeah, tomorrow's Wednesday. September 6th, and it's at the Congregational Church of Sunnyvale. You can log on to our website to get an address, but 1112 South Bernardo Avenue, Sunnyvale. Myself and my counsel, Daniel Sheehan, will be there to give you more in-depth legal updates and kind of just contextualize the entire history of this struggle. Like, this struggle is not new. We've been fighting for our humanity and our birthrights and our spirits, not just as Native people. I'm talking about human beings. We have been fighting for our rights for a long time. And just now, because of Standing Rock, we're able to share that vision. And it's real. It's very, very real. And I know that we are seeking it, and we'll continue to seek it together.
Just a quick question, Chase. In closing, could you give the people that are listening the larger context in which this is occurring, with regard to the elephant in the middle of the living room of Donald Trump now ascending to the presidency, and 180 countries around the world having joined together in Paris to cut back on the use of fossil fuels, and the resolution that this particular administration has come to push forward with the production of petroleum, and touch upon the entrance into this dynamic of calling home the troops, basically, from the Middle East in the form of Tiger Swan, and bringing them in as the military protection of this administration that is pushing forward with the increasing of the production of petroleum.
Those are great points. I think we have to, again, mention fear and hate and division. And wherever those concepts are being perpetrated on us, wherever we are told that this is your enemy, that we need to be very, very careful. Because since the advent of currency, since the creation of the concept of nation states, since the advent of other concepts like private property and so forth, we have those who are able to, for instance, lend money to both sides of a war. Those have kind of been the determiners of what our policy looks like and who we are supposed to call an enemy, who we are supposed to vilify, who we should be willing to send our sons and our daughters to die for. And what we are witnessing right now, what we will witness in our country, in America, where there is and where there was a low-level oil war in the heartland of our country, where a private military corporation was able to bring to bear the force of the arms and institutions of the state, a state of the union, to who enjoys the air of objectivity and legitimacy. They were able to instigate them to create a boogeyman. They were able to call us jihadists out there. And they were able to create this battle, this low-level oil war. And they called it a battlefield. They were able to make a lot of money off of the taxpayers' dime in North Dakota. And what we are seeing is that our constitutional rights, our rights to speak freely, our rights to peaceably assemble, our rights to avail ourselves of interstate commerce, our rights to privacy, our rights to be free from illegal searches and seizures, our rights to tell the truth, our rights to be whistleblowers, those are all at risk if the current modus operandi of this encroachment upon our natural birth and constitutional and other rights continues in the name of unchecked greed. This is why I say capital without compassion is uncivilized. We have to, this is just another play on the dynamics that they try to force. Oh, if you're against corporations, you're anti-capitalist. Well, no, we're 100% pro-entrepreneur. But capital without compassion is savage. We have to change our ethos. Because for us, it's very real. This is a real thing. This is not I could go to prison here. And we can't let that happen. We can't let a single water protector serve a day in jail. Because right now they're coming for us, but soon they're going to be coming for everybody. We have to be truthful and be ready. We don't have to engage propaganda or hyperbole. Let's just get the facts out there and make our own informed decisions, kind of be our own leaders, so to speak. Thank you.